Hello, I wanted to take a few minutes and do a different type of video. This one's going to be focusing on places that I intend to look for Sasquatch in the future. I have 5 different locations that I'm going to be covering in the video, and I'm going to be using Google Earth, Google Maps, a few website sources as well for other photos and such. So let's go to the first one here. Most of these are just going to be ones, let me a little disclaimer, not guaranteeing you're going to find Sasquatch at these areas. These are areas that look good to me, and I think there's a high probability. There's lots of locations in Utah that you'll have a good chance of finding some sign of Bigfoot or Sasquatch. The first one I'm going to be covering, though, is an area that has lots of documented sightings of Bigfoot. It's in the Uintas. It is Christmas Meadows, and I'm just going to click search here and see. Hopefully it'll zoom in here. Okay, this is Christmas Meadows campground, as you can see. Before we do anything else, here's a photo of the campground, so you can see it's a really beautiful scenic area. There we go. This is probably Ostler Peak in the background. We'll talk about that more in a minute. There's some more similar photos down here. But anyway, here you have the campground. If I were, studying this myself, which I have been, there's this hike that will go all the way to Ostler Peak, so it's a trail here. I'm thinking that down here, I believe it is, there's kind of an offshoot creek, and then you have the larger creek over here, and then the trail. So there kind of is a area that's cut off by water. Then you have this slight ridge here. If I were to, let me see, if I were to skew this a little bit or pan it, I might be apt to just go over in this area here and start looking. Obviously, anywhere along here is great, but this looks, as good as any to myself. You could also follow the creek along the water. You could take the trail and look for sign leading off of the trail. If I were to do this in a 2-day backpack trip or something, I might also entertain the idea of, you see this kind of gravelly dirt trail here. Maybe it's Bigfoot going up and down the mountain too much. Probably not, but of course not. But up here, it's several thousand feet. It's not that long of a hike. You get up to this lake. I believe it is, what is it called again? Scow Lake. I thought it had a different name. And then you can see further down in this general vicinity, you have the Hinckley Scout Ranch. That's a nice area, but also an area which could have Sasquatch. That's private property though, but it's not very far from that, is my point. Like I mentioned, this area does have sightings recorded. For instance, if you were to go onto this website, utahbigfoot.blogspot.com, we have an entry here, 2012. They're recording older sightings they've seen in the past. He says, I have 4 recorded stories of sightings in Christmas Meadows in the Uinta Mountains. Here is the second. And then they go on to explain that. I won't cover that now. You're welcome to look it up. The campground is right here, and then the hikes kind of starts at the campground. The trailhead to Ostler Peak goes all the way up to the mountain peak, and you'll get a view basically kind of like this. This is Amethyst Lake. So if you wanted to do that as well, it wouldn't be Sasquatching. It's a little above what they're, not saying they wouldn't visit there maybe, but it's above their habitat where they would live. But all in this area, you could hike the whole length of it, look for sign, and then go off trail. But those are just looking at Google Maps areas that I would pick. I would try to go up to this lake. I would try to hit that area boxed in by those 2 intersecting creeks. Out of many possible choices, that's just one I came up with myself. Okay, so that's the first area. Okay, the next area is a place between Broads Fork and Lake Blanche. Those are both trails, and it's kind of an uplifted area between the two. Let's go ahead and run a search for Broads Fork. While it's loading there, let's This is how it looks at the end of the trail of Broad's Fork, so if you ever want to go up there, that's how it looks. You don't have to go up this high though. The general trail is right through here. Let me go ahead and make this three-dimensional. In fact, I'm going to flip this around. So here you have the trail head that goes up to Lake Blanche, and you have several lakes up here. That's an interesting area as well. Down here I heard a vocalization at night in January. This road is kept open because it's further up, it's a ski area, so in the winter you still have access to this. I won't go into more detail, but I did hear a vocalization down here. In the fall time I've gone up here, and in the distance you can hear lots of vocalizations, at least that's my experience. But you can tell they're in the distance. And I'm just thinking maybe that they use this area when there's a lot of hunting. There's not people firing off guns at these well-traveled trails that people will just hike for recreation. So since there's not a lot of hunters, I'm thinking they migrate here in the fall perhaps. And I'm just trying to figure out where would they be hiding that I can keep hearing them off in the distance. And my answer's been this area right here. It's situated between the two hiking trails, kind of a little shelf there. And it's actually it's fairly hard. I've tried to navigate and figure out how to get up here because there's rocks and boulders, and I'm going to have to go up there with a GPS, but it's not that intuitive how to access this area. So again, no promise that Sasquatch is here. I have hiked both of these trails to the very end, and I was specifically paying attention to sign. My last trip up here, I actually didn't finish the trail because I was looking for sign, and there's plenty of sign along this creek here. Still need to go up here. In fact, well, I have one video up if you saw one where I was pulling some mylar balloons near a creek. That was this area here. So actually, I guess this is an area where I mentioned these are places I still want to go. When I'm saying I still want to go here, I need to go to this area over here. Again, no promise that you're going to find a lot of sign, but it seems logical to me that they might like it up there. You can come down to the water if they like. Also, another thing, if you keep hiking up here to the top, you're going to be rewarded with a view of both the Lake Blanche area as well as Broad's Fork. In fact, let's zoom in here and take a look. It's not really that long of a hike. It is somewhat steep in some areas. So you'll have this view from this hiking vantage point, 2 hikes in one, and then you'll have this one over here. In fact, let's go ahead and look at... So this is, again, Broad's Fork. And I realize this isn't directly Sasquatch related, but you know, you might be kind of interested in what you're going to see, and to me it's interesting at least. Let's do Lake Blanche. Okay, and here you have Lake Blanche. You'd also see this view from that high overlook. This is one of my own photos from Lake Blanche that I took in the fall. Here's another one the same day. I was happy the sun, you can see it just came out. It was enveloped in clouds, and then finally the sun came out, so I was quite pleased with that. This area is extremely dense underbrush, and anyway, the shelf I was talking about, it's really dense. I would recommend going in spring when there's enough of the snow that's gone, or better yet in fall before there is a lot of snow accumulated, because you'll have, you know, green stuff will be dead and probably be easier to navigate. Okay, that's all for that hike. Okay, on to San Pete County. I don't have any photos for this one. Basically, there's a city called Spring City. You take this road up into the mountains, then you turn off of this side road, which is a dirt road, and you follow it up. And then if you look closely, you'll happen upon a little pond here. Let me see if I can adjust this. Okay, we kind of have a triangle shaped pond. Looks pretty squatchy to me. There is a creek over here and over here, and then it's joins together there, so this area is kind of enclosed in a sense. You do have the road over here. For instance, if I look at the details, drill down, and that looks interesting to me. I'd like to see what that is. We have over here all of this, and the whole area, has potential. Again, I'm not guaranteeing that there's a ton of sign there, but it is interesting to me. So anyway, nice looking area. Let me zoom, pan over here. If you go a little further, take this little trail over here. That's probably something like a biking trail. You'll get an excellent view of the area. Just come on up to here, and on this ridge you'll have a grand, magnificent view also, so I'd recommend that. I have not been up there, but looking at it on Google Earth, I'd recommend it. In fact, let's just, for fun, zoom in and take a look. I don't know how it's going to look. Yeah, so you can see far off in the distance. And here's just a few feet away, panning the other direction. So you have a great view of the whole area. And then up here it's higher elevation. So that's another area I'd like to visit. I'm actually going to visit that one pretty soon, hopefully. We'll see if it happens before the snow starts to fall. Next up is Dairy Fork Road. And there is a small reservoir called Smith's Reservoir. In fact, let's just take a minute, and further down here is the reservoir. And here is the reservoir. The photo does not really do it justice. These rocks kind of sticking up are quite impressive, and when the fall leaves change color, it's really a nice area. You could definitely look kind of on the south side of, in fact, let's pull up the map, maybe down here. But I was more interested a little further up here. We have an area called, I believe it's Coffee Pot Creek or something to that effect. It's not loading the name on the Google Earth. Let me go to Google Maps here. Coffee Pot Creek, and there's Coffee Pot Spring. Personally, I was thinking I would hike up to around this area, and or if I, definitely see sign while I'm making my way this direction, I could follow that sign. But this seemed like a interesting area to me. It's kind of a north-facing ridge in Utah. You can see this is the greener side. Then we have the spring, we have the creek, and it's a pretty remote area if I were to zoom out here. It's between Indianola and Highway 6. People from Indianola do visit up here, but it's not as well visited as many areas in Utah as you could imagine. So that's on my list. Next up after that, this is White Pine Lake. For scenic views, I prefer Red Pine Lake, which is kind of branches off, and it's a rougher trail from White Pine Lake. I've been up to the end of that, but we won't talk about that today as far as showing photos. Just for your interest and information, this is White Pine Lake. Red Pine Lake's even better. as far as photographic opportunities. There's Red Pine Lake. The trail up, I did find some sign along Red Pine Lake, along this creek. Some interesting things there, but I think that'll be, I have not been up this trail for White Pine Lake. I've always been heading this direction where at that point it branches off, but there's a lot more greenery opportunity for Sasquatch on this hike. So you can see the trail here zigzagging up the slope. This might be a good area to look. The trail stays on this side of the creek. If you can get over safely to this side of the creek, this might be another good spot to look. If there aren't trees giving a bridge across, it might not be safe. Perhaps in fall you could still get across. I'm not sure. If it were me, I'd probably give this area a shot. And if I could find a safe way over, I would try over here also. Just pay attention on the trail. If you see something that's interesting, you might do some impromptu following of sign. For instance, on Red Pine Lake, I would go along and everything looked like normal forest, and then you would round a bend and all of a sudden it looked like a tornado went through and there's just trees and everything, markers and signs. I would only follow them for a few hundred yards because I was intent on getting to the end here with the lake for taking the photos. I bet there's even more over on this side. Okay, that concludes the 5 different areas that I plan to investigate in the future. Anyone is welcome to visit the same. Again, I'm not insisting that you will find lots of sign or have sightings or what have you. Little disclaimer, I don't take any responsibility if someone stubs their toe out there or worse. I wish everybody luck in looking for Sasquatch. This is just kind of provided for informational purposes, maybe entertainment purposes. Anyway, good luck.